I was doing a lot of research about mass incarceration. And when you start really looking into this, brothers and sisters, it's going to sicken you to the core of how evil these people are in this country when it comes to slavery. Because, yes, slavery is still legal in the United States. Slavery never ended in the United States. It was only transferred. Now, what we're going to look at is some things about prison, but let's start off on the 13th Amendment. And it says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except, see, if they really wanted to end slavery, they should have left it at neither slavery nor involuntary servitude. And that's it. Leave it alone. But no, because they're lazy, they're sorry and good for nothing. They want to build everything off of the back of slaves. You see, there's a lot of people talking about manufacturing jobs. There's a lot of manufacturing jobs in prison, but those same people that come out of prison, they can't get any kind of jobs. They railroad them back in the system. So as it says, except as a punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, when we know this whole system is based upon race, racial bias, and if you have an all-white jury as a black person, you're screwed, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Now, we're going to talk about the prison population. We're going to show and ask just some legitimate questions, right? Now, when we talk about the crime in the United States of America, this has come from the FBI table 43 at the bottom. Now, the white supremacist media and also just the ordinary white supremacists will always quote the murder statistic and the robbery statistic. They never quote the whole thing or a consensus of the whole thing, because if they actually quoted a consensus of the whole thing, what the FBI says about people who are arrested for crimes, they're not going to be able to push the narrative that they push about murder and robbery. So according to the FBI, 69.7% of all individuals, that means juvenile, adult, arrested were white. 26.6% were black or African American. That's what we're going to focus on, since, you know, everything with us is black and white. We had a dog and cat relationship. Obviously, we got to talk about this all the time. I hate talking about it, but we have to. So please keep those numbers in your mind. 69.7% of the arrests in this country for crimes are white people. And it makes sense since they're about 64% of the population, right? 26.6% were black. Okay, just keep those numbers in your mind. Now, when we look at the prison population of the United States of America, it is extremely ridiculous. In the United States of America, you have 2.1 million people incarcerated. Now, if you look at the population of the United States, it is a country of 318.9 million people as of 2014. Of course, that number will go up. And out of the 318.9 million people, they have 2.1 million of their people incarcerated. It is a sin and a shame the United States of America leads in incarceration. Now, number two, we have China. Now, you say China has a lot of people locked up as well, 1.6 million people. Well, when it comes to China, China is a country of 1.357 billion people. To have the number of people that China has locked up is nothing compared to their overall population in their country. We go to Brazil. Now, Brazil, they have 650,000 people locked up. And we have the population of Brazil of 200.4 million people. That's not really a whole lot. The United States have more people than they have, and they're leading number one. They haven't hit 1 million people in Brazil. Now we'll go ahead and look at Russia. Russia has 626,000 people incarcerated, and the population of Russia was 143.5 million. Now let's look at the next country underneath them, India, which they have 419 thousand people incarcerated. And let's see, we can pull this up. Underneath there, you look at India. They're a country of 1.2 billion people. So how is it that a country of 1.2 billion people has an incarceration of 419,000? That is extremely sad. If you combine India and China's incarceration by numbers, United States would still beat them. So this is something that we really need to look at. They're using prisoners for slavery. They are making them do all the work, but yet the people outside of prison can't get a job whatsoever. Now, we are breaking this stuff down, and we're going to look at the racial aspects of this, because everything in the criminal justice system is about race. Don't let them tell you no different, please. They rig it from the white juries. They rig it from the DAs. They rig it from the judges. They rig everything against us. And we're going to talk about this. Now, remember that number. Whites had 69.7% arrests for crimes. Blacks, let's make sure we quote this just right, had 26.6%. Now we're going to look at who makes up the percentage of the prison population. Here, they're talking about racial and ethnic disparities in prisons and jails. Whites are underrepresented in the incarcerated population, while blacks are overrepresented. Okay, so now we look at Native Americans, 0.9%, 1% of the population. Now you have blacks, 13% of the population. They make up 40% of the prison population. You look at Latinos, 16%, and they make up 19% of the prison population. But let's look at whites, 64% of the population, yet they're 39% of the prison population. Look at that. Now, this group commits almost 70% of the crime in this nation because they are more in population, so it makes sense. But how is it that they are 39% of the prison population? Blacks represent 13% of the population, yet they're 40% of the incarcerated people. You see how these people are. See, when you start breaking this stuff down, you're going to see where the racism there. How is it that the people commit 70%, but they only 39%? And the people that commit 26% are 40%. Well, they break this down here in this next thing. So now we're going to look at something from the Sentencing Project. They have racial disparity in the sentencing. Once minority defendants are convicted, they are likely to be sentenced more harshly than white defendants convicted for similar crimes. And we've talked about this over and over and over. A black dude commit a robbery, he'll get 10 years. A white dude get a robbery, he may get probation, he may get 2 years. You never know. This happens, and they break down by what they researched how this is happening. Okay, but no one wants to talk about this racism that goes on in the criminal justice system, and why isn't that being solved by black lawyers in this country? As in other areas of the criminal justice system, much overt racial discrimination in the sentencing process has been eliminated over the past decade, yet race remains a significant factor in sentencing decisions. In 2000, Professor Cassia Spohn concluded after her comprehensive survey of 40 studies covering 30 years of sentencing outcomes at both the state and federal levels. So it says, although it's irrefutable that the primary determinants of sentencing decisions are the seriousness of the offense and the offender's prior criminal record, race and ethnicity and other legal or relevant offender characteristics also played a role. Black and Hispanic offenders, and particularly those who are young, male, or unemployed, are more likely than their white counterparts to be sentenced to prison. They also may receive longer sentences than similarly situated white offenders. Other categories of racial minorities, those convicted of drug offenses, those who victimize whites, make sure we put that out there, those who victimize whites, those who accumulate more serious prior criminal records, or those who refuse to plead guilty or are unable to secure pretrial release, also may be singled out for more punitive treatment. So in other words, if you go to trial, they're going to hammer you because you won't take a deal. Now, 95% of the people that's in jail took a deal. Not too many people want to go to trial. So they're saying after the conclusion has been further verified by research conducted over the past decade, in 2001 analysis of 77,000 federal cases from 91 to 94, for instance, Professor David Mustard found that even when cases were controlled for the severity of the offense, the defendant's prior criminal history, and a specific district court sentencing tendencies, blacks received 5.5 months longer than whites. Hispanics received 4.5 months longer than whites. When income was considered as a variable, the disparity became even greater. Blacks with incomes of less than $5,000 were sentenced most harshly of all, receiving sentences that were on average 6.2 months longer than other defendants, because the average sentence length was 46 months. This data means that poor black defendants receive sentences on average 13% longer than other defendants. So if you're black and poor, you're going to get more time. You see, these people have broke this stuff down. The mainstream media won't tell you how these people are doing this. The information's out there, but they don't want to say nothing. Why? They all in cahoots with your oppression, with treating you wrong. That's it, period. And we in the black media has to sound the alarm on this stuff. Now, Sister Ava DuVernay, she have her Netflix, the 13th, and you should go watch that. But also, we need to do our part as well to talk about this, because these people, when we call them devils, we call them lying devils as children of Satan, we know why we're saying this. We're not saying this to be mean. We're not saying this because we just hate people. We're saying this because even the Lord himself said anyone who kills, steal, and destroy is a devil, period. And that's all these people are. They want to kill you, steal your life, and destroy you, period. And this criminal justice system isn't fair. My thing is this: if you commit a crime and treat everyone equally, it's no issue with me. I'm fine with that. But you don't sentence a black person to more time, but a white guy, he gets off. But how many stories have I done where you have rape victims and the white ones don't go to jail? Just had a white one sodomize a special needs black kid with a coat hanger. He didn't go to jail. See, it's this sort of stuff right here is what we're talking about. Now they're talking about capital punishment. And this is a lot of reason why, as black people, you need to speak up more about capital punishment as well. Racial disparity, in particular, pronounced in cases involving the most severe penalty imposed by the U.S. criminal justice system, the death penalty. The United States has executed 1,335 individuals since the Supreme Court reinstated capital punishment in its 1976 decision, Gregg versus Georgia. As of 2013, more than 3,100 prisoners awaited execution on death row in the U.S. Of those, 42% of those waiting to be executed are black. Now remember, if whites are committing 70% of overall crime, you as black people are committing, let's go look at this again, 26% of the crime. Then why is it that you're 42% of the people who are on death row? That doesn't make any sense at all. But it does make sense in this system that wants to oppress you, harm you, and kill you. It's just the truth. It's a hard truth. It's a truth that makes me sick to my stomach. It's a truth that I wish was not a reality, but I have to live in reality. And this is why we say, much as possible, try to stay out them people way. Try not to do anything, because these people is setting you up every time you go down there with them. Numerous studies have shown that two racial variables affect capital punishment sentencing: the race of the perpetrator and the race of the victim. Pay attention to this. First, defendants convicted of the homicide of a white victim are substantially more likely to face the death penalty than convicted of killing non-white victims. Now, anybody from the streets know you do something to somebody white, you'll get more time, period. Because let's think about it. The judge 9 times out of 10 going to be white. The prosecutor 9 times out of 10 going to be white. The jury probably going to be predominantly white. You all set up. Now, the Harvard study that talks about racial bias have proven that the majority of whites have a implicit bias toward black people. Now, implicit bias doesn't mean you in a white supremacist group, but implicit bias means you rather be around your people. You don't really trust black people like that. And that's you. So how is it that we can have a fair trial with people who have an implicit bias toward black people? The only way we can actually have a fair trial, you have to have a black judge, a black prosecutor, and a black jury. That's the only way you can have really a fair trial, because there wouldn't be no racial bias there, period. But the moment you say, let's do something like that, and they can't really convict you and herd you in jail like a slave, then that's going to be a problem. Okay. Now, continuing. White people constitute half of murder victims in the United States each year, but 77% of persons executed since 1976 were convicted of killing white victims. Comparatively, black people also constitute half of the murder victims, but only 13% of persons executed since 1976 were convicted of killing black victims. So you kill a white person, you're getting the capital murder charges put on you as a guarantee. You kill a black person, not so much, right? Now, let's say a 1990 Government Accountability Office survey of 28 separate studies showed that 82% of the studies, the race of the victim was shown to influence the likelihood of a defendant receiving the death penalty, with those convicted of murdering white victims more likely to be sentenced to death than those convicted of murdering black victims, even when the cases were controlled for crime-specific variables. So you kill a white person, you may get the death penalty. Kill a black person, you get to sit your time out. Why? Because they do not look at you as human. They don't look at your life as worth anything. They, in their mind, they say white life is the only one that matters to us. They show you behind this every single day. But some black people are very silly to believe that you think that you are equal with them in their minds. I'm not saying nothing about who's truly equal and who's not, but in their minds, they don't look at you that way. This is the stuff that they put out based on what's going on. This is not me making it up. This is not me being hateful. It's just the facts that we're pointing out and letting you know how these people hate you, and this is what they do to you, okay? Now, second, black defendants are more likely to be sentenced to death regardless of the race of the victims. So they say even though you may kill another black person, they'll kill you too. Now you're talking about black folks. Now, continuing. An extensive 1998 study of Philadelphia death penalty cases found that black defendants were 38% more likely to be sentenced to death, even when the research is controlled for the severity of the homicide. The GAO confirmed that 75% of the 28 studies it surveyed in 1990 found that black defendants were more likely to receive the death penalty than white defendants. This is what they say in the Sentencing Project. So when these two factors are taken together, the impact of race on capital sentencing is staggering. Since 76, the United States has executed 13 times more black defendants with white victims than white defendants with black victims. You hear that? So these black guys or whoever's killing a white person, 13 times more for you is going to happen with a capital murder case. But if it's the other way around, it's not going to happen. It is straight up racism. Everything in this country, you need to pay attention to this. They have built this system on color, and they get angry when you point this stuff out. They won't refute what you're saying because you even showing it, like this video. I'm showing you what I'm reading off of. I'm not just calling this stuff out of my head. You see the links I'm looking at. That's why I make sure you can see the links. But they want to maintain the system. So anybody who points out this truth, they're going to say you hate white people. You are a race baiter. No, you are a evil one. You are a child of the devil, and we have to expose you for what you really are. That's why the justice of God going to come upon you is actually already happening, but you just don't see it. Let's talk about the war on drugs. The United States government's war on drugs has perhaps contributed more than any other single factor to the racial disparities in the criminal justice system since its official beginning in 1982. The number of Americans incarcerated for drug offenses has skyrocketed from 41,000 in 1980 to nearly 500,000 in 2007. Furthermore, harsher sentencing laws, such as mandatory minimums, keep drug offenders in prison for longer periods of time. In 1986, released drug offenders had spent an average of 22 months in federal prison. By 2004, federal drug offenders were expected to serve almost 3 times that length, 62 months in prison. Now, the data demonstrates that the war on drugs has been waged in racially desperate ways. From 99 to 05, African American constituted roughly 13% of drug users on average, but 36% of those arrested for drug offenses and 46% of those convicted for drug offenses. While the war on drugs creates racial disparity at every phase of the criminal justice process, disparity in sentencing laws for various types of drugs and harsh mandatory minimum sentences disproportionately contribute to disparity. So as you heard there, black people are jammed up. You remember the crack epidemic? I know. I grew up in that time period. I know how they looked at black people. We was the scum of the earth, and excuse my French, let's lock them niggers up. That's how they felt about the situation. Let's grab them, let's put them in jail for 20 years for one crack rock. Oh, but we have a heroin epidemic in the white community right now. We have a crystal meth epidemic in the white community right now. You have an opioid epidemic in the white community right now. Now it's a health problem. Let's not lock them up. Oh, we feel so sorry for them. It's young kids. It's this one, it's that one. But when it was black people with crack, lock them up. You get what I'm saying? Everything in this country is about race. And until you get out of your bubble to realize that, this is why we have the problems we have. This is why we would never, ever have people come together, because until you get rid of the system of white supremacy, it will never be peace in this nation. Continuing. One of the most frequent decried aspects of the war on drugs is the chronic disparity between federal sentencing laws for crack and powder cocaine offenses. For more than 2 decades, the ratio of the amount of powder cocaine needed to trigger the same sentence as an amount of crack cocaine was 100 to 1. Even though crack and powder are pharmacologically identical, because black Americans constitute 80% of those sentenced under federal crack cocaine laws each year, the disparity in sentencing laws leads to harsher sentences for black defendants for committing similar offenses to those of their white or Latino counterparts convicted of possessing powder cocaine. While the Fair Sentencing Act of 2010 reduced the crack cocaine sentencing quantity disparity to 18 to 1, thousands continue to languish in prison, serving sentences applied under the old laws because the act had not been applied retroactively. Furthermore, Fair Sentencing Act did nothing to alter the harsh federal mandatory minimum sentences imposed for virtually all drug offenses. Mandatory minimums are most often triggered by sale of a certain quantity of a given drug. Federal law prescribes a 5-year mandatory minimum sentence for sale of 1 gram of LSD, for example. Once the mandatory minimum is triggered, judges must impose the mandatory sentence regardless of mitigating factors such as the defendant's role in the offense or likelihood of committing a future offense. They talk about in 2010, the number of black male offenders convicted of federal offense subject to mandatory minimum was twice that of the convicted white males. Okay? No matter what, if you're black, you're going to get more time. So when we say that, hey, black people get more time than whites, and they say, well, you got to prove that. What they proving that? Of course, even if you prove it to them, we're not doing this to prove nothing to them. I'm way past trying to show them anything. I'm trying to educate you, black man and black woman, to know what you're dealing with and where our fight definitely needs to be at, right? Mandatory minimum provisions double the average length of sentences received by black defendants from 76 months for all federal offenses to 152 months when a federal offense was subject to mandatory minimum provision. Okay, so as you know, I'm not going to read all the rest of this mess, but what I'm trying to tell you is this, and I'm going to go back to this. When you go in court, it's stacked against you as a black person. If you're poor, you're screwed. It's just bottom line. That's what it is. If you're a black person with a little money, can pay for an adequate defense, maybe you will have a chance. But even that's slim because you're black. We will not get justice in the courtrooms of America when you look up and you see an all-white jury. You're just not. It's proof of that, even from the Duke University study that shows that all white juries are going to convict blacks a minimum of close to 80% of the time, period. But if you throw at least one black on the jury, then that number lowers. And most of the time, they don't want to throw blacks on the jury. And if they throw a black on the jury, they want to get some like a shoe shining Sambo. Or in other words, they want a Ben Carson on the jury. That way they can get a conviction, because these prosecutors want convictions so they can run for attorney general in their states and all this other stuff. That's what they want. Or they can be elected as judges and can say, oh, I was tough on crime and I got these convictions and that convictions. No, you're rigging the jury to try to get a conviction. That's exactly what they're doing. Now, these black people who are in law and people with money want to change something, we need to change. It should be against the law to have all white juries. If you can't have all white this and all white that, then why is it you still having all white juries in the jury box? You should not be that. It should be an affirmative action on definitely two places. It should be under the jury system, and it should be police officer. They shouldn't have no all white police force, because that is not a good thing for black people. And once again, I'll put this back up. We got 64% of the population is 39% of the incarcerated people. Doesn't make sense when they commit 70%. 13% of the population represent 40%, and yet they don't even do 30% of the crime. We just, like I said, brothers and sisters, education and knowledge is power. We got to have that. And, you know, when these people tell you anything, please be armed with this knowledge to tell them, like, listen, this white supremacist system is an evil against us, and anything they do is not for our good at all. And so definitely, you know, look into what we're looking at here yourself. You see the links up there. You can just type that in on your phone or type it in on your computer, and you further research, make your own videos off of the information that we're seeing here. But it's sad what's going on in this country, how you incarcerate so many people, you know, just so you can make a profit, but you can't give a person a job outside of prison, or even people who's not in prison, because all these manufacturing jobs are sitting there in America's prisons. And yet you're building more and more prisons. You know, your Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, wants to keep using private prisons, and everybody making money off of the mass incarceration system. That's mostly a plantation for black people. Please be knowledgeable in what's going on. Know that every area of this system is permeated on racial bias against us and racial hatred against us. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about this video. And also make sure you pick up one of our Black Unity shirts as well. We're selling, and we just want to promote Black Unity. We need to come together no matter what, because look at what these people are doing. We got to put aside our differences and come together. It's very serious. It's not going to get anything better no time soon. You got that stuff going on in Washington. We need to unify, and unify quick. Leave me a comment as well. Share the video, like this commentary, and subscribe for more news stories.